Hello, everybody. Chris Fluke here. Chris Fluke Podcast, episode number 85. If you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to see it, Chris. You're going to see this guy bundled all up. You might even see a little steam coming out of my mouth because I'm up here in Pennsylvania. It's before noon. It's cold. You know, we've been having a run of just cold weather here. Luckily, the snow hasn't been too bad. Knock on wood. But, last year we had 20 to 30, maybe even more inches of snow. This year we're only at 5 to 8, I think, maybe a little more. Anyhow, been doing okay in that department. But I woke up today and I looked at that weather and I was like, 10 degrees. That's not bad because the past couple days it felt like -3, -4, 0 degrees in the morning. Then once I saw 10, I was like, you know what, I'll take that. And then I thought to myself, that's crazy. 10 degrees is not cool. 10 degrees is still cold. And that led me to think about the great Dorian Yates. If you don't know that man, he kind of changed the game in bodybuilding. He got super, he had a density to the bodybuilding scene, right? Where it's like this guy's chest to his back was like, it looked like 2 feet. That's how dense and thick his muscle was. But anyhow, Dorian Yates was somewhere in the UK. And his motivation for training when he was trudging through the snow and it was frigid, ice cold temperatures, he kept thinking about those West Coast bodybuilders and how they were probably driving their Porsches and their Ferraris and the sun is out and it's blazing. And he used that to kind of motivate him and to drive him forward. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going Dorian Yates mode here. I'm getting outside. I'm going to start working out. No more excuses. Let's keep it moving here. All right. Now moving on here. The point of this podcast, man, we're going to call to action. Kids need to work out, right? CDC, they've had a tough couple years here now with COVID-19, but they came out with a report a few months ago. And basically what it said was this. The rate the rate of BMI increase in children, now we're talking about children only, has increased substantially. When you look at those that were already kind of overweight or obese, it's increased in that population more than any other population. It's like the opposite. It's like the rich get richer, but in this sense, the fat get fatter, for lack of better words. Now, most of the things that we look at here, we already had a downward trend. I mean, even before COVID-19 came along, the numbers were kind of startling. We went from, in 1974, 10.2 kids are overweight, 5.2 are obese, 1% severe obesity. Fast forward to 2017, this is before COVID, overweight kids, 16.1%, obese kids, 19.3%, severe obesity, 6.1%, all right? So the overweight went from 10.2 to 16.1. The obese went from 5.2 to 19.3. The severe obese went from 1% to 6.1%. As you can see, these trends were already bad. And then COVID-19 comes along. What does that do? It closes down the schools, it disrupts routines, it increases stress for everybody, more screen time for the kids, fewer opportunities for physical fitness. Now, even just for example, when we had COVID, it was around the holiday, and we don't really do television as adults, but we watch more television than we have, probably in the past couple weeks prior. Just in 1 week, we probably watch a couple months worth of television for our standard. Same with Emmy. Same with our daughter. We don't really do TV during the week. She'll go to her grandparents and watch some television, but we realized that we were watching more TV then than before, and we were mindful of all this. It just kind of happens. If you're somebody not mindful of some of these little things, it kind of could snowball and become something bigger. So we just went over 1974 to 2018, which was pre-pandemic in America here. We saw that those numbers were rising at a crazy level. Now, when we start looking at, August of 2019, just to August of 2020, remember, we're in 2022 when I'm recording this. Obesity in persons aged 2 to 19 went from 19.3% in 2019 to 22.4% in 2020. All right, so we saw a 3.1% increase in just 1 year. And this is the COVID year, right? Kids aged 6 to 11 experienced the largest rate in BMI change, during March. And then we're looking at 2020 now. During March to November, okay? Persons with moderate or severe obesity gained an average of 1 pound to 1.2 pounds per month. This led to a 6.1 to 7.3 pound increase, all right? So those individuals that were moderate to severe obesity, they gained almost 6.1 to 7.3 pounds over the course of 6 months. Those at a healthy weight, and I'll put that in quotes, saw an increase of 2.7 pounds during that same period. All right, so we're looking at, they doubled it for sure. The moderate to severe obesity kids put on twice as 2.2 as much weight as those that were deemed to be at a healthy weight, right? So we got an issue, right? We already talked about what was causing some of this stuff. You know, just in general, kids are not playing, they're not as active as they used to be, right? We saw those numbers, you know, overweight, obesity from 1974 to 2018. When you start combining these numbers, 16% to 41% in kids, right? And that number's up now. All right. So even before the pandemic, it was bad. Then the pandemic hits. What are we doing? We're sitting around more. We're watching we're on TikTok. We're watching Netflix. We are basically not doing anything, right? When it comes to preventable death and trying to live a nice, long, healthy life, a sedentary lifestyle is the leading cause of preventable death, right? All we have to do is just get up and get moving. Last episode, I talked about that walk research, but if you didn't listen to it, it's basically this. When you compare individuals that walk 6,000 steps a day to those that walk 16,000 steps per day, those in the 6,000 group had a 126% increase in all-cause mortality, meaning they're going to die of something within the next 10 years, 126% greater chances of doing so. Now, when you look at that number's crazy, right? 16,000 might not be feasible for you, right? But if we just get up and walk 1,000 more steps than what we're doing right now, so what do you got to do? You got to see where you're at, number one, right? And then from there, add 1,000 steps to your routine, and you're going to decrease that all-cause mortality number by 12%. Now, if you're able to add 1,000 and then 1,000 and 1,000, we talked about creeping incrementalism last time. Little by little, we're going to get ourselves to a better spot. If you're able to do that, you're going to live a longer and healthier life. That's been proven. That is a fact. When we look at things like that, that's basic non-exercise activity, right? That's one factor. Now, what are we going to do for physical activity, right? And how are we going to condition our bodies with cardiovascular work and make sure our heart and our lungs are nice and healthy? That's the third aspect of this all, right? So, like we said, a sedentary lifestyle, the longer that sedentary lifestyle is a part of your life, as a kid say, so the earlier that a sedentary lifestyle is introduced, the earlier the comorbidities that are pretty much putting people in hospitals right now during COVID, those comorbidities, the longer they're around in a body, you know, the more serious that stuff becomes. So ideally, you want to nip this in the bud, so to speak, at a young age. Overweight kids, obese kids tend to continue on that path, right? They become obese adults. We already talked about, you know, I don't like saying this, but the fat getting fatter. It just doesn't sound too kind. But it's that whole concept, you know, you're putting yourself in a hole, then it's easier to kind of, your body's not functioning at a high rate, so it's just going to continue that downward slide. Whereas if you could start adding healthy habits to it, maybe you start overturning some of that stuff and you start working that in a different direction. All right. Now, we looked at the sedentary lifestyle, and we talked about these habits, right? Childhood inactivity is going to basically, if we could form habits in a child, those habits are more likely to transfer into adulthood. The earlier you start implementing these ideas in a kid's heads, the better it's going to be. I think about this. I'm 36 and I'm working with middle school and high school age kids that are only thinking about sports, right? And I'm telling them, man, you guys got to get up. You got to get moving. You got to get walking, this and that. They're like, dude, I'm not going for a walk. Like, what is this? You think I'm like a 70-year-old woman, you know, who walks every day with her friends? And I'm just like, well, the earlier you get these habits kind of ingrained in your brain, the better your life's going to be, period. And I'm trying to be that individual where you get these kids in here and you got to talk. Yeah, that's great. You're an athlete, right? Oh, that's awesome. First, second team, all league, all area, whatever it may be. Congratulations, right? But let's not eat that junk all the time. Let's try to walk. Let's not sit around for 7 hours on Saturday because you don't have a game and watch Netflix, okay? Let's get off the social media. Let's try to get to sleep a little bit earlier. Try to eat a little bit better, all that stuff. You start introducing those concepts to kids at a young age, you're not draconian with it. You're not a tyrant. You know, you're just introducing stuff. You know, it's that creeping incrementalism idea. It's like planting the seed. You start planting the seed now, down the road, it's going to kind of blossom into something beautiful, right? So as an adult, as a parent, whatever it may be, not only do you need to introduce these ideas, we need to show them that we do it too, right? So we need to be role models, okay? Now, we talked about the walking side of things, but, you know, when it comes down to it, physical activity has greater benefits, not just for, like, the all-cause mortality is the big one, right? That's the home run. That's the grand slam. That is, I mean, we all want to live longer and be healthier, right? But if you're a young kid here and you're starting to develop, there's all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of benefits that go along with physical activity, right? So there was this great book, Spark, and it talked about school in, I don't know, somewhere in the Midwest, right? And basically what they did is kids that were struggling in school, they had them do, I think they called it zero period or block zero, whatever it may be. So before school started, they had a physical education class. And what that class did is got their brains firing, right? They did physical activity, they got a sweat going, they got the body temperature up. They started doing things in these brain, I don't know, I'm no neuroscientist, but I'm just saying these synapses start to open up, right? These branches just start to open up. That when they get to school, there's more branches open and available, that information was able to stick, and they were able to obtain better grades down the road because of it, all right? The book is called Spark. So that first introduced it to me. Shown to improve cognitive performance and development in school-age children. It has been shown to increase sleep quality and duration. How many kids go to bed at 11 or 12 and get up at 5, 6 or whatever? It's like, dude, that's not enough. You should be 9, 10 hours, whatever it may be, right? Get these kids active, like literally tire themselves out throughout the day. That they just want to go home and crash. Like keep them moving, keep them busy. Not by being a tyrant, but by just introducing these ideas to them and to show them the importance of being on the move. Physical training has shown a positive impact on self-perfection and self-efficacy. According to social cognitive theory, those with low efficacy expect poor outcomes and are more likely to give up in the face of adversity. So if we have low efficacy, we're like that doomsday person. Oh, nothing's going to go right. Oh, of course that's going to happen to me. Oh, I can't climb the rope. This stinks, right? But if you could get that same kid to face that rope, climb, and he tries it once or she tries it once and they fail. The second time they fail again. The third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th time they fail, but they're starting to get a little bit better. Next thing you know, that improvement starts to ignite a little bit of fire, all right? That improvement is going to get them to continue to want to do it. And then next thing you know, they're coming in there on session 15. They're like, hey, can I try the rope? And guess what? They get to the top, right? And they learn a lesson, right? They learn that they faced adversity and they overcame it. They learn that things can be overcome with practice, with hard work, with honest effort, 100% effort, because gravity is a hell of a thing, right? You're not going to climb a rope and overcome gravity unless you go all in 100%, right? It needs a full commitment. And, something like that is a great teaching tool. You see the joy in a kid's eyes after they're able to accomplish something. I mean, there's literally some kids that took months, right? So imagine working at something for months and then that day comes when you accomplish it. Imagine the joy that you get from that. I see it in these kids' faces all the time. So those kids are going to develop into something because they're starting to overcome that low self-efficacy. Those with higher self-efficacy are more likely to persevere and see obstacles and outcomes as something they can control. It's the growth mindset rather than the fixed mindset. I know that with my effort and my work and all of that stuff, I can change what's going on. I can change the present. If I don't like what's going on, I could do something that could change it, right? If I have a fixed mindset, I'm just going to accept it and say, woe is me. This is life. I'm not smart. I can't do it. All of that things there, that mindset that just is not a winning mindset at all. So when you introduce physical activity with kids, you're improving self-efficacy, self-esteem. You're trying to instill that growth mindset in them. Self-perception, self-esteem, self-efficacy, right? That's what we want to develop in the kids, and we can introduce those concepts at a young age so that then, just like the bad habits that are started in childhood affect our adulthood, the good habits that we do in childhood affect adulthood, right? If you force this stuff on kids, they're probably going to rebel at some point. You got to nudge them. You got to introduce it. You got to nudge them. A college, Division I athlete was like, I was like, oh, is that how your coach teaches you how to do like a clean, which is a complex lift? And she was like, no, he just influenced us to do it. He was trying to influence us to do it. So what's that mean, man? He's nudging them a bit. Hey, why don't you try this a little bit here? Oh, we're just warming up. Why don't you try catching that bar a little deeper? Next thing you know, they're catching it deep with heavy loads. Next thing you know, they're adding 30 pounds on their lifts because they're able to comfortably get under the bar and stand up, right? From the summertime doing 120 pounds to doing 140 pounds in a few months. That's what I'm talking about, right? That wouldn't have happened if that person from the get-go would have been like, hey, I want you to catch the bar deeper. What if they didn't want to? They might have pushed back a bit. They might have fought him a bit. Oh, this is stupid. I don't like it. No. He nudged him a bit, right? He influenced him a little bit. He said, hey, come on, give it a shot. Give it a shot, And because of all this, right, this nudging, this gently guiding kids in the right direction, they're going to be stronger, more resilient, capable adults, period, all right? End of story, right? And, you get these added benefits, right? So, in the elderly population, they talk about resistance training and fighting off just the things that happen with older age, so to speak. The osteoporosis, the sarcopenia, which is loss of like skeletal muscle, right? The cardiovascular disease and injury. Adding on some extra armor, some muscle, some bone density at a young age, again, like we said earlier, the earlier you introduce it, the longer it's going to be there. The stronger you are at 25 and 35 and 45, the stronger you're going to be at 55, 65, and 75. All right? Because on average, that whatever it is, I don't know the number, you're going to have, say, 58% of your strength at 75 than you had at 35. Now, please don't quote that number. I just kind of made that up based off of a book that I read that I just don't remember anymore. But anyhow, long story short, the more strength you build now, the more you're going to have when you're older. All right? How do we get this stuff, man? So we talked about nudging. We talked about not being a tyrant. We talked about not being up your kid's rear end about it, okay? In order to create consistency and commitment, you need to have a little bit of fun. Canada has their own, the NSCA, which is the American stuff. All of these sports organizations have this like long-term athletic development concept to it. And basically what these models say is activity and movement, it needs to be fun and have a relatable purpose. Both short and long-term goals assist with commitment and motivation. So if you have the 12-year-old where their goal is a college scholarship, there's too much space in between that they might lose track and become not motivated, right? So we have to have some smaller goals that we can kind of hit along the, not only along the years, but along the months and the weeks and the days, right? So you need to introduce some goals, and then you need to have them working towards those goals. Because remember the whole self-efficacy thing. Get kids working towards something. When they accomplish it, it's going to be great. And if they don't accomplish it, then guess what? They just failed at something, and they're going to learn a lot more from that than they did from the stuff that they accomplished, right? If you want to have that growth mindset, you're going to have to experience failure and figure out what went wrong and figure out ways to overcome it, all right? Physical training teaches that. Gravity, like I talked about on the rope, shows up with the barbell, all right? You're going to bench press, right? Guess what? Gravity wants that bar to crush your chest. You got to fight it, and then you got to drive it, okay? Sometimes you're going to fail, and you're going to need a spotter. You're going to need a good spotter, okay? Not only in the weight room, but just in life in general, man. But anyhow, that's almost a different topic. You're going to need a hell of a spotter in order to do that, okay? So, we talked about the parents, right? Parents got to pave the way. Teachers have to pave the way. Coaches have to pave the way. I don't like seeing those coaches eating Subway, or not even Subway, man. The grossest hoagie you could find, right? A big fat cheesesteak and french fries before a game, drinking soda, and then going out on the field and telling kids about physical conditioning, right? I don't like that. Walk the walk, man. If you're a coach out there, get moving. Start going for a walk. Start getting your 6,000 steps in. Show these kids what it takes. Show these kids that you can do it. Show these kids you're not giving up on anything. And yeah, you might have been inactive for 20 years, but guess what? Not anymore, all right? So get yourself into shape, number one. Same with the parents, same with the teachers. Be a positive role model, all right? Get out of this whole thing about, physical activity. This whole mindset that we have right now is kind of poor, and that is why our country's in a poor spot physically, right? We need to shift our focus here and start prioritizing our health. And if we could do that, if we could all become healthier, I don't think our hospitals are going to be filled up with stuff. I don't think that the threat of that is going to be as apparent, as widespread, when the population gets themselves in a better shape, all right? So let's do that, right? How do we do this stuff? Now, I already talked about what's this program going to look like, I guess, is what we should get into, right? So you're always going to have, I think a big obstacle with anything when you're working with kids is going to be that whole, can the kids follow directions? And if they can they do what you ask of them safely? If you're working with a group of really, really young kids, you got 25 to 35 minutes, kids in that like 4 to 7 range, maybe we'll say, where they're going to be with you. And then you got the occasional, kid that could stay focused for a while. But you got to know your audience, and you're going to have to understand that, are these kids going to be able to follow directions and play and do what we want them to do in a safe manner? That's number one. And then when you fast forward that into high school, if you tell kids not to bench press that way or not to squat in a certain way, are they going to do it? And if they're not going to do it, you might want to get them out of the weight room, because that kind of behavior is going to be potentially contagious for some of those kids on the fringe. Can the kids follow directions safely? And then we're gonna hit those big bang exercises. We're gonna, like I talked about, just what I'm doing personally, right? We're gonna squat, we're gonna hinge, we're gonna press a weight overhead, and we're gonna pull. And we're probably gonna bench press because everybody loves a bench press, and we're probably gonna do some single leg stuff, and we're probably gonna do some explosive work, right? So when I'm programming for kids, we'll do the explosive stuff first. Older kids, we're gonna do some Olympic lifts, right? We're gonna hammer some hand cleans, and then we're gonna hammer some jump shrugs, right? Or clean pulls or power shrugs, whatever you wanna call them. And then we're gonna move on to maybe the big bang exercise, like a squat, say. For younger kids, we'll do box jumps, we'll throw medicine balls, right? We'll just do a body weight jump, we'll do an explosive push-up, we'll do some explosive hammer and rope waves, things like that. Stuff that's fast twitch that really needs to take, that forces you to like fire muscles in a very fast manner. That's what we do first. Explosive lifts first, explosive exercises first, then we're gonna move to those big bang lifts. For the young kids, it might be a body weight squat. To the older athlete, it might be heavy front squats, okay? And then we're gonna go, if we're doing a hinge, right? We're going maybe a kettlebell deadlift for the young kids, maybe a hex bar deadlift for the older kids, maybe a Romanian deadlift for the older kids even, all right? So that's how we're doing this type of stuff. For the presses, big fan of overhead, all right? Big fan of bench pressing. We're starting with push-up position planks and doing push-ups, depending on how that goes, all right? And then maybe we'll start mixing in some one-arm bench presses or just some barbell bench presses or one-arm overhead press, things of that nature. Sorry, dumbbell. Dumbbell one-arm presses, not barbell, I don't know. Pulls, we're doing horizontal rows, all body weight for the young bucks, right? Horizontal rows, inverted row, whatever you want to call it, rack rows. Then I'm doing chin-ups, I'm doing pull-ups. If they can't do that stuff, we're hanging from a bar for time. If you hang for 12 seconds, we're gonna try to get to 20 next time. After that, after we get to 20, we're gonna get to 30. After we get to 30, we're gonna keep pushing that thing till we get over a minute, all right? After that, we're gonna do some holds maybe. Chin up hold, chin above the bar. Give me a 2 to 5 second hold, come down slow. That's how we're advancing that type of stuff. To eventually, we're gonna have kids hammering 8 to 10 pull-ups and looking like champions in the process, right? Squat hinge, push pull. Those are the most effective ways to build whole body strength, all right? And even if no matter what, if you have a time crunch, right? This is 40 to 50 minutes, 3 times a week. You could hammer these you could get this stuff in at least twice a week, all right? A lot of stuff that comes back. Oh, what about injury rate with kids, right? We already talked about it. Can a kid follow directions? Do you have somebody that could supervise, right? Somebody that actually knows their way around a weight room. That's important, all right? And, there's this thought of like growth plate injury, right? Read some of this research. National Strength and Conditioning Association, NSCA, peer-reviewed stuff, all of that stuff. No study shows growth plate injury. Injury occurs with improper lifting technique and inadequate supervision. Teach the techniques, supervise the techniques. Make sure that they're doing it okay, right? Those are when injuries are occurring. If you have a growth plate injury from lifting weights, it's probably because you were lifting with poor technique, all right? Lastly, strong kids grow up to be strong adults, not only physiologically, but mentally as well, right? We already talked about the why. If you want to have a strong kid, our job as parents, coaches, teachers, is to make this future a better place than what it is today. If I have a child, you want them to make the world a better place. I want our daughter to be this wonderful little girl that has all these great qualities, who's tough, she's feisty, she works hard, and she knows what it takes to accomplish things because she was exposed to challenges growing up. That's what we want that's what I personally do. Marisa might have a different story. I'll have to ask her. Obviously a kind and caring girl, which she is already. But we also want her to have that little feistiness to her, right? We want her to know that hard work will pay off if she's willing to keep grinding and keep fighting, right? That's what we want to do with her. And then by doing so, hopefully that becomes infectious with some of her other kids and she could kind of be a leader in that regard and get her teammates and get her classmates and get other people working hard, encouraging people, cheering them on, not having an ego and kind of keeping an eye on the greater good, right? That's what we need to do. We need to implement that in our kids. We need to encourage kids to be more active. We need to encourage kids on the why, okay? It's not just a short-sighted thing, but I want to be good at lacrosse this year. I want to be good at lacrosse now, and then when I become an adult, I want to be able to coach my kid and run around with them. And then when I become a grandparent, I want to be able to dance with my granddaughter at a wedding, okay? Stuff like that. How are you going to do that? By not getting yourself so far out of shape that it's going to take a hell of a lot of work to get back in shape, right? So you got to just stay active continually through the rest of your lives. Be a good, positive role model, parents. Walk the walk, talk the talk, be there for your kids. Don't be a tyrant. Don't force it. Nudge them, influence them, do whatever you got to do. Peace, everybody.